What is up, everybody, and welcome to the eighth episode of Exit Light. My name is Jackson Tate, and I'm once again here with friends and co-hosts Colin Rudis, Zach Ellis, and Zach DeGrowie. And for the first time on camera, we have a special guest, our good friend James Hughes.
How's it going, everyone? I'm James Hughes. I'm a sophomore here at Tech. I am newly appointed Vice President of Marketing on Castle Guard, and I'm really excited to get started in that new role. We got some cool things planned, so keep an eye on the socials.
Before we get started, just wanted to take a moment to offer our thoughts and prayers and our condolences to the families of those affected by the tragedy on April 16th, 2007. For all of us at Virginia Tech, April 16th kind of epitomizes like what Virginia Tech means to us because even in the darkest of days, like the darkest evil, strongest tragedies, it really turned into a reason, to come together and turn into a community that we all know and love. You see it now. It's kind of one of those things that allows Virginia Tech and Hokie Nation just kind of rally around each other. And I think we all hope and pray that we never have to deal with anything like that again. But even 17 years later, it's an awful thing, and it's still a heavy day, but it's also a really powerful reason to come together, and it still is. Um, but on a brighter note, last time that we were on the air, last time we recorded, we did not have a head coach for Virginia Tech women's basketball, and this time around we are glad, very happy to just be a part of the fact that Megan Duffy from Marquette is our new women's basketball coach. Ellis, we talked a lot about this over the past 2 weeks. James Ellis, CDG, we had a lot of kind of back and forth about like whether or not this was a good hire, what we thought was going to happen, what was going to be the state of our program once we figured out like what was moving forward. So what do you guys think about the Megan Duffy hire, and what do you guys think is going to be like the outlook, kind of moving on into the summer and into next season?
I think it's a great hire. I mean, you look at her stuff, and she played in the WNBA. She played under Coach McGraw, Hall of Fame coach, and everything she said at that press conference just made sense with Virginia Tech. She really made it seem like it was home for her, and all the girls seem to rally around her. It appears like they're all coming back, and I'm really excited for what the future holds for us.
You kind of mentioned, the fact that a lot of the players are coming back. A lot of our, current roster is staying at Virginia Tech, and I really think that kind of, um, it really showcases the power of Coach Duffy, and like her morale and her like like how personable she is towards the players, but also Hokie Nation in general. The fan base and the love that we kind of poured out, to the players. James, you were kind of our biggest social media recruiter in those 2 weeks. Um, kind of just like showing the players that like how much we care about them and how much we appreciate them being a part of Virginia Tech women's basketball. And if you were to told me, when Kenny announced that he was leaving, that we were going to keep everybody but two current players and then obviously the recruits, I think I would have told you that you were lying. I expected Karras to go. I expected everybody to kind of walk. I thought there was gonna be like one or two left, genuinely, and I think that's a testament to just how personable Megan Duffy is, and I'm excited for it. James, I mentioned that you were kind of on the warpath on social media. What do you think kind of worked with that? I mean, I don't know how many players you got to talk to, or and how far your reach was in that aspect of stuff, but like yeah, just tell us about it. Just tell us about like the 2 weeks on your side of things.
So basically on Twitter and Instagram, I've been going to pretty much every recruit we're interested in, men's and women's side. I haven't talked to any of the women's players directly, but I did get to talk to Ben Burnham and Ivy Curry of the men's team. Different subject, but they're both great dudes, and they're excited to get started here. One thing I have heard, though, Raven Thompson from Chattanooga, name to keep an eye on. She was here this weekend, averaged 14, 7, and 2. So that's a good name to keep an eye on. She was having breakfast with Coach Duffy on Sunday.
Another thing I just want to kind of say is
think it's huge that the fan support for Coach Duffy has already been huge. You know, she does her introduction press conference and that's packed, and then she gets her introduction at the spring game and the crowd is going wild. And that's a spring game that was packed. And, you know, we may or may not have to mention that one coach got introduced into a packed spring game, and then a former coach got introduced into an empty spring game. So, you know, shout out Hokie sports fans. And that's about all I had to say.
Yeah, I also think I think it's a great hire for the Hokies. I think women's basketball heading in the right direction. She mentioned a few times that she really likes to take pride in team defense, not just relying on one singular person to pick up, key matchups. So the physicality is definitely going to be there. She said that at the spring game when I think Bailey had asked her what a Megan Duffy women's basketball team looks like. So I like that outlook. I think she's doing well with keeping relationships here while building new ones. And I think that's going to put us in the right direction.
You know, I think it was really cool the support at her press conference because, you know, I get there a couple minutes before it starts. I go sit down and I look in front and Liz and Kayla are just sitting there right there. And to see the former players watching the new coach get introduced, that's really cool. And I think it shows about Coach Duffy and how she's going to accept everyone and she's ready to move on past the former situation and just get ready to coach basketball. And I was looking, one of their players in the portal, I don't know how you say it, Liza Carlin maybe. She was unanimous All Big East first team. And if we can manage to snag her, that would be huge for our program.
Yeah, going off of that, Liza Carlin, I've been looking at her. She's gaining interest from a lot of big schools, so I'm not entirely sure we land her, although it's probably a good chance considering Duffy's here now. Another one, Mackenzie Hare, I do think she'll end up here. She was over 40% three-point shooter last year. I think she's got 2 years of eligibility left, so she'd be a good add for us alongside Eck. But me and DeGrowie got to meet Coach Duffy after her press conference, and she was genuinely a great person. She could have just said thank you for being here and moved on, but she asked us all of our names, our majors, where we're from, and she had a genuine interest in having a relationship with Castle Guard, which I thought was great.
I think it's really important to just for a coach to kind of connect with the fan base right off the bat. And I don't mean to say that like our previous coach didn't. I felt like Coach Brooks really did make an impact on the fan base, and he really did say the right things. Um, but I think that's kind of the reason it hurts so much is because at the end of the day, he said all of these things. He was connecting with the fan base and still walked away, right? And whether you agree with it, disagree with it, whether you're still in that kind of anger phase we talked about last time, it's still kind of fresh and it's still kind of one of those things. It's kind of like like when somebody breaks your trust, you're not going to be open to trusting right away, right? And so I think it's really important for Coach Duffy to really take the right steps in connecting with the fan base and kind of just pushing herself on Hokie Nation and allowing Hokie Nation to open their arms back up into embracing a new coach that wants to be here. Um, the one thing I kind of want to talk about, you talk about, the addition of transfers, like who we're going to get in the portal. We have a good amount of roster spots open. We also have, our recruiting class kind of just disappeared, right? And so you have, you know, I don't want to be David Cunningham here and tell you exactly how many scholarships we have open, but I believe for the most part, we have a good 5, 6, maybe 7. I think it was up there of roster spots we were able to fill. And there's a bunch of talent that's still out there. James, you're going to be a lot more knowledgeable than me on this situation, but there's a girl from Villanova that got a bunch of interest from like Iowa and other big schools. And I remember Virginia Tech was on that list. Um, I don't I don't is that's not Liza Carlin, is it? That's the different girl.
It's
Name
Lucy Olson.
It's Lucy Olson, right? And I just feel like um, it kind of speaks volumes to the fact that we have a new coach and we're still jumping right into these big recruiting races. Um, we're Lucy Olson's she's probably a top 10 transfer in the country, and we're right there on her radar. So I think that's really important. Just kind of picking up where we left off. Obviously, it's a little bit of a backward step with the loss of a coach, a loss of a top 10 recruiting class in the country, but just jumping back in and getting it going again is important. Um, I don't. What do you guys think? Like we talked just a second ago about like who's staying. Like we've seen Carly's announce that she's staying. Samaya is withdrawn her name from the portal. That we could go on and on talking about the roster. What are you guys excited about, looking forward to in terms of like returning production? And like what is that? What do you think that leaves us, and what do you think that means moving forward?
I'm really interested to see who runs the point guard, whether we have McKenzie run it or if Samaya takes the reins, because those two both really have 4 stars. We've seen the skill for Samaya warming up. We haven't seen what Nelson has, but I think she's a star. And Carly, she played really well when she got the point guard reins. So does she take it? Is it Samaya? Is it McKenzie? Where do we go in that direction? That's, I think, the biggest thing for us.
Um, yeah, and DeGrowie, we kind of talked about this. Is like, we were mentioning throughout the process of losing players, returning players, whatever, that if the more and more that we return, obviously we're going to be in better shape. Um, when Carly announced, just a week and a half ago that she was going to be coming back to Blacksburg, it was kind of like it was like the sun shining through the black clouds. It was kind of the first happy news that we had gotten. I believe that was kind of right on the heels of Georgia announcing that she was leaving as well. So it was really it was just a really good thing to see. And then all of a sudden, you get to the press conference, and Coach Duffy announces that, um, she's, or I guess in the interview with David after the fact, she's going to return. She's expecting to keep everybody on the roster. Um, let's look forward to it now, Zach, and think about like who do you think is going to be starting? Ellis just said everything that he was thinking. Like what's your ideal starting five based on what we have on the roster right now?
I think Carly's definitely going to start. It'll be interesting to see if she takes that one role or maybe Nelson does. Maybe you could kind of see her maybe running a two, and maybe Nelson takes one because she's a little shorter. I think Tilly's definitely going to be in that lineup for some probably the three. Rose, I could see definitely at the five. I think the big question mark is at four. Even when Brooks was here to coach, I know the big thing we were still missing was that solid four spot. So that hole still exists, whether who's coaching this team. So that's the spot I'm looking to see get filled in the portal within the next maybe month or two. So I think other than that, we got the starting five. So we just got to find that last missing piece.
I think another important player to the roster is also going to be Karis Baker. If she gets hot, then she basically hitting almost every shot. And I mean, I think she's also definitely going to be in the run for a starting spot. So we'll just have to see from there. And then obviously you have the freshmen coming in. So I think ultimately we'll be all right, and the roster will still be solid next year.
So, James, I got a question for you. You know, we've seen Virginia Tech sometimes when Liz was off the floor run a real small lineup. So, do you think there's like a possibility we could have Suffern, McKenzie, Baker, and Carly on the court at the same time? Or how do you think the lineup might happen?
I think there's probably two different starting lineups, if you want to call it, that they're going to end up having. I think there's going to be a small lineup, and then there's going to be a big lineup depending on, or a more normal lineup depending on what we get out of the portal. But I could definitely see like later in games when we need shots, you have Suffering out there, you have Nelson out there, you have Carly out there, Karras, and I don't know, maybe Eck. Just you sacrifice defense for a couple possessions just to try and hit a couple shots.
Um, I kind of want to, I think it does open up a lot of doors with kind of the status of our roster right now to run a multitude of various offenses with various sizes. We kind of I think a lot of last year we saw a lot of when we really needed to lock down defensively, we'd play that big lineup when we put Clara and Liz both on the floor. And then, remember the NC State game at home? We put Karis Baker on the floor and Carly Winslow on the floor, and they were just kind of taking care of business on the on the glass. And that's obviously we lost Liz, we lost Clara, we're losing Georgia, but other than that, we're keeping a lot of really young production, but also like a really big amount of just important production, and not just in scoring, right? Colin was talking about Karis Baker playing a pretty important role next season. Kind of just want to say like my piece on it. She could fill that 4 spot. She's kind of similar size to Taylor Soule. She's young. I expect her to probably put on some muscle as well. As she continues to develop in Blacksburg. And obviously she's a stretch for as well. Like if she was playing that spot, she can step out and shoot the 3. And she's only going to get better inside the paint, right? Um, so that's going to be a really important thing for her to develop and just see like where she fits in the puzzle pieces, because that she could step on the court and change the game. We've seen it happen. There's been a good amount of games where they needed a big shot and she stepped up and hit a big shot, or when they needed big rebounds and she's out there throwing elbows around getting the rebounds. So Karis Baker is going to play a big uh, big part in kind of filling the gaps that Claire Strack, Georgia Amore, and Liz Kitley leave. But speaking about Liz Kitley, a huge set of days for Liz Kitley. Just kind of putting the bow on the season in the positive way, and a bow on Liz Kitley's career as a Hokie. For those who weren't in attendance at the spring game and may not know, during the spring game they announced that Liz Kitley's number 33 was going to be hanging in the rafters next season. Um, yeah, and that's a really cool moment for a spring game. A bunch of really dedicated Hokie fans showed up to just to be a part of the action, be a part of the really important weekend in Blacksburg. And they announced that Liz Kitley's number was going to be hanging up. They said that there's going to be a Liz Kitley night in Castle next season in the fall, and that's really exciting. Um, and then, to cap it all off, Monday night comes around and Liz Kitley gets drafted to the Las Vegas Aces. And we're going to talk about this in just a second, but really good landing spot for her when you think about it. You guys were all there for the spring game on Saturday. What were the emotions when you guys saw that saw that video pop up on the Jumbotron?
Yeah, kind of caught me, and I guess you we were very surprised because we had just gone to the bathroom and we walked back out under the tunnel. Everybody's looking at the scoreboard, and you look at it, and it says Liz Kitley's number 33 will be retired at the bottom of it, and we're just like, whoa! And she's up there, like they have her on video giving a speech, and it's just, I mean, it's obviously deserved. She's, you know, 3-time in a row ACC Player of the Year, greatest player in Virginia Tech history, well, women's wise, and should have been in conversation for National Player of the Year had she not torn her ACL. But it's definitely deserved.
Yeah, it was cool. It was right when the first quarter ended and they start playing the video. And so in my head, I'm like, okay, they're like saying congrats, go kill it at the draft type of thing. And then the part in the video when like the tweets start showing up and it says retire 33 on there, I'm like, wait a minute. There's no way this is happening. And then right after that, it says retire 33 coming 2024. And I look over, Jackson had just gotten there. And the joy on his face was crazy. You could see he was starting to get tears of joy in his eyes. Like the moment there, the whole stadium erupted, and it is much deserved. That girl is insane. She deserves to be in the rafters, and 33, rightfully so, being retired.
Yeah, right as they kind of put on the video, I kind of had the same thought. Maybe they're going to say, go kill it at the draft. But I was kind of getting the hunch maybe, they were going to put at the end, we're going to retire 33. But as soon as they put the tweets up, you kind of just knew that's where they were headed. And I saw it. I was watching with my mom, my little brother, and they thought that was really cool because they got to see her play in person on senior night. So that was pretty cool, much deserved, and definitely would have been a riot had they not made that announcement ASAP.
Yeah, I mean, we all knew it was coming eventually. They couldn't announce it during the season because that would kind of take away from the glamour of it. I'd heard some rumors about it earlier in the week, but I didn't want to get my hopes up over anything. But the video was really cool to see. On Twitter, I did see the suggestion that the retirement game should be in Lane, kind of like how Iowa had their game in Lane in their football stadium last year. I think it'd be a really cool way just to send Liz off the right way. I mean, Castle only holds 9,000. It'd be cool if we could have 60,000 plus in there. It would be cold, but I think you can make it work.
Um, you know what's interesting is I thought when you said I saw something on Twitter, I thought you were gonna bring this up. I thought you were about to say I think they should or I saw a tweet that was saying they should retire Liz's jersey against Kentucky. Um, and I saw that and I'm like, yikes, can you so I mean, honestly, it's weird. It would make sense because yeah, obviously Kenny would be there and Kenny was her coach. But can you imagine like the amount of emotions? I feel like that would turn into like the most hostile environment I think I'd ever be in. Honestly, if Kentucky comes to Castle anyways, but just like the emotions on both sides of that, yeah, I'd just be absolutely nuts. Um, DeGrowie, I'm glad you kind of gave your piece on that. I didn't know that you made it to the spring game because we didn't see you all weekend. Um, I was I honestly, I kind of thought you were just kind of holding down the fort in your dorm room. Not gonna lie, but I'm really glad you got to see that special moment because we would have hated for you to miss it. Um, but Ellis, you talked about like kind of just seeing like the joy in my face. I'm glad that Colin and I didn't miss it. We had actually just spent about 15 minutes in the beer line um on the other side of the field, and we were like obviously it's a spring game. We really didn't care about getting back all that fast. We were just kind of enjoying ourselves, just getting drinks. The beer line was chaotic, to say the least. And we kind of just turned the corner, and I remember I didn't see much. I just saw retire 33, and obviously it clicked really fast. And I was just like, wow, what a perfect way to kind of tie up all of this chaos that's happened in the last like 2.5, 3 weeks with like the perfect bow, right? It's like, like everything that everybody needed was a little bit of the light at the end of the tunnel saying that like, hey, like this is still our stuff. Like this Virginia Tech women's basketball is still our stuff. And it has nothing to do with, whatever schools people are going to. It doesn't have anything to do with who's leaving, who's staying, what's coming up down the thing. Everything that happened with us there, being a passionate fan base is still our stuff. And that was really cool. Um, and then just like I said a couple seconds ago, she turns around Monday, gets drafted to the WNBA. Um, we were kind of sitting there watching the streams on our laptops last night, um, wondering how far she was going to slip. I really thought that she was going to go to DC at that 21st pick. Um, and, they came back from that break and they had the 5 picks announced. And I was like, oh my Lord, I don't know how far she's going to drop. Because I think, and you guys can comment on this as well. Like I did not think she was going to stay up in the top 10 like she was projected initially. I expected a little bit of a drop. I did not expect her to drop to 23. I expected her to stay in the low teens, maybe 21. DC really could have used her as well. They chose to pass. So, um, what do you guys think about kind of the draft and how far she dropped, but also about like where she ended up with Las Vegas and the situation she's going to be in?
I don't know much about the WNBA, but I've kept up with the playoffs last couple of years, and I know Vegas is a dominant team. I think they won back to back. And so it's really weird. I don't know if they have like special IR spots on the roster in the WNBA, but it's really interesting to see how well she can rehab and if she can fight for that roster spot because she definitely deserves to be there. But being on that dominant team, that's one thing to see. My roommate said it's kind of like the Golden State of the WNBA is Vegas. And I think that is a wonderful team, but it's going to be hard to get a roster spot on there. And I thought somewhere like Washington that's not as good would be a better fit. But I have heard their rehab is good in Vegas. So let's hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good roster spot. I think it's a good roster spot for her. She's going to be sitting behind Asia Wilson for a year. Um, but I'm pretty sure I saw that she is guaranteed a roster spot as almost an IR candidate. So I'm not really sure how it works in the WNBA, but hopefully she's able to keep a roster spot until she's healthy next year. But I think that's going to be beneficial for her sitting behind so many talented players there.
Yeah, I think it is really beneficial that she can sit behind Asia Wilson, who was dominant at South Carolina and has been dominating in the league. So that she can learn from her, I think that is very beneficial for her, if not on the Aces, for a potential new team later on.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is I was looking at the roster. I've followed the WNBA a little bit over the past couple years, and that's mostly because Asia Shepherd, Kiana Taylor Soul, really don't have a favorite team just because I mean, other than the Mystics, there's really nobody close. Um, but I paid attention to the Aces because when Shep was on the team, they had a really good run. They won their first championship, which was cool. Um, I do know this about the Aces. They have a really good facility. They have the best facilities in the league. Their owner really just poured a bunch of money into all of their facilities in their arena. They play in that Michelob Ultra Arena. I'm sure you guys have heard of that. It's like the smaller arena in Vegas. And even then, they have to play games in T-Mobile um, because they need more space. They're also the first team in WNBA history to sell out season tickets, which are really cool. But facility is a huge thing for those players, especially when like we've seen the salaries and the money that they're making is not great. Um, for Liz, obviously she needs to, focus on her rehab and getting her knee right. Um, but what's important for her is at being an injured player, I think she's going to be a pretty strong candidate for the IR spot, like James said. But she's also going to get a year to learn without expectations. And Isaac, you mentioned this, like in our little notes, that there are no expectations for her to play right now. And there like she doesn't have to go out and compete. All she has to do is focus on getting healthy, learn, and be a sponge and just absorb everything that she can. Not to mention she's learning behind Asia Wilson and Candace Parker, who are two of the best players in WNBA history, not just right now, history. And that's a really good situation for her. And I really can't imagine that Candace Parker stays around that much longer because she's kind of on the older end of like a playing career. So I think that's really cool for Liz. She's going to have a really good opportunity to continue to better herself. And we're going to see what that leads into for her down the stretch. And that's exciting. Um, speaking of things that were exciting, maybe not the most exciting, but we had spring game this past weekend. Um, we got to see Kyron Jones and the Hokies kind of take the field and give us a little bit of a teaser heading into next fall. The spring transfer portal window opens today or maybe yesterday. It's open for like a week and a half, 2 weeks, and that's going to be an interesting kind of minefield to navigate and see like who leaves, who stays, who we get. But talk about spring game. Like, what did you guys see from the Hokies? What kind of made you salivate? What made you excited for the fall? And maybe what left you with more to be desired from Virginia Tech.
I think the depth is one thing that was really highlighted for us there because our receiving room is one of the best in the country. I've seen a bunch of rankings where we're anywhere between like 10 and 15 for our receivers. And so we know Jalen Lane, Ali Jennings, Daquan Felton, but I think it's the guys behind him that are really going to push them to be better. You got Aiden Green, who everyone's talking about is going to be a stud. You got Chance Fitzgerald, Chance Wiggins, and Brody Adams, which I know ZDG is really excited to see him. So seeing that battle and who gets on the field and knowing that if someone unfortunately does go down with an injury, we have another guy to step up and be right there. And then running back depth too. We know what we have from Tootin. We know Malachi's a dog. But seeing that freshman Tyler Mason and then the coach's son, Prelu, I think that's how you say it. He was impressive for a fifth string running back.
Yeah, you mentioned Prelu. He scored 2 touchdowns, but also shout out the play of the quarterbacks. Kyron looked great, like we expected, but Pop, Pop Watson, he showed out. I mean, he didn't get a ton of playing time, obviously, because it's a spring game, but for for the opportunities he had, the throws he made, he looked pretty damn good.
Yeah. Positives. I like the O line, minus one guy who shall not be named, but looks like we might be replacing him.
Name them.
Uh, we all know him, Parker Clements.
Mr. Parker Clemens.
Love the guy, but he's just not holding up for a potential playoff team, hopefully. Um, I do like that we're in on Andrew Chambly from Arkansas. He's got a official visit scheduled with us. He was talking with Tyler Bowen this morning, so that's good. More positives. Drones was great. Prelo was great, and the biggest surprise for me was Keyshawn Burgos. He had 3 sacks all in a row. That was pretty
And a
impressive,
fumble recovery on like the in the
and a
same
fumble
quarter.
recovery. Yeah, he had quite a game for himself. Negative side, couldn't really judge much since our defense can't hit, and we rely on that, and we can only run like half of our offense since Drones wasn't running. So there wasn't much I didn't like.
Yeah, I was gonna say exactly what James said and talk a little bit about the offensive line. Um, it's gonna be interesting to see if we can make a big portal pickup, big portal splash here. I don't know if you guys saw, there are a bunch of players hitting the portal. Louisville kind of has a little bit of a crap storm going on right now, because apparently they've made NIL promises and can't keep up with those promises, and so the players are kind of jumping ship with kind of the empty promises. And then you've seen the guy from Arkansas, bunch of stuff, just open doors, right? And obviously, I'm not saying that we're going to go pick up any of these guys, but obviously, it's open doors mean open opportunities. Open opportunities mean you have the opportunity to cash in. Um, and we'll see what that leads for Virginia Tech. The one thing I do wish that they would have done, and maybe this is just me in like my fan perspective, I wish they would have put the entire first string offense on the field at the same time against the entire first string defense, because I want to see Daquan Felton, Ali Jennings, Jalen Lane, and Kyron Jones go to work. I want to see Tuden on the field with all of those guys at the same time, and I kind of just want to see that happen. And I want to see Mansour Delane and Dorian Strong kind of take over on the defensive side and see what they have, just to kind of know, like and obviously iron sharpens iron. Like I want to see that happen live. But obviously it was a good time just seeing all the boys ball out. We talk about PJ Prelo, coach's son. He had a pretty big. I want to say he had a block punt like last year or the year before. But other than that, he's kind of been under the radar here at Virginia Tech, and I expected him to leave. And I feel like at one point maybe he was like rumored to be in the portal, but decided to stay. Um, but obviously you can see that he continues to work hard. He was getting carries in the first quarter, right? So that shows that he's at least at significantly higher on the depth chart than he ever was, because he wasn't running the ball 2 years ago. So I think that's going to be cool just to see how like the development of players for certain, but also there's like the growth of the players that we haven't seen a lot. Aiden Green's going to be a stud. He had a really good game against Tulane in the bowl game. Tucker Holloway obviously not playing last night or on Saturday. Um, a bunch of players that are going to have really good opportunities to be great. Um, at the same time, obviously the big stars balled out. Dorian Strong should have had a pick on the first or second series of the game, but it got obviously blown dead because of the two-hand touch rule. But he kind of got pushed away by the receiver and still made the play. That's kind of what we saw right in front of us. It should have been OPI, still caught the ball. Dorian Strong's a stud. Um, so a bunch of and good defensive efforts from both sides, truthfully. So I think a lot to be excited about. Um, we talk a little bit about where we need to improve. We talked a lot about offensive line. Are there any other gaps that you think we need to fill portal wise, and like anything that we need to take runs at?
I mean, depth anywhere, it never hurts. Go get another corner, go get another safety or linebacker. Again, really hard to judge off the spring game, but it never hurts to have a lot of good guys.
One area I do think we need to improve, other than tackle, obviously, which we are addressing. I think we need at least one more tight end in the portal. I like Saint Germain; he had a great bowl game, but I mean, we don't have a like guaranteed threat at the tight end position, and I feel like that's the only thing we're missing on offense at the moment.
I kind of want to go off of what you just said because I was thinking about that myself. Um, don't forget about Nick Gallo. He's coming off of his ACL. He was slated to have a big year last year. Obviously, Daquan Wright had a really good year last year too. Obviously, he didn't really produce much in terms of the box score, but he was really important in the third and longs and those passing downs that you needed. And that's kind of seems to be the offense that Bowen runs and Virginia Tech runs, is that like the tight ends aren't going to be making the Bucky Hodges like deep catches type things, the Jordan Reed whatever. It's kind of those short passes where you're swinging them out and getting the yards after the catch. I think Nick's going to have a really good season after being healthy. He's still taking his rehab slow just because um, you know uh, he obviously there's no rush, but I think tight end's going to be okay. But I do agree. I think one more addition would make the magic happen for Virginia Tech.
Another thing I want to talk about is just the atmosphere of the game as a whole. The home stands were pretty much full. North end zone stands full. East was probably a third of the way, maybe halfway. I mean, there's probably 25, 30,000 people for a spring game, which is nuts. And then, I'm going to look at my phone for a second. I name some of the players that, showed up. Tremaine and Trey Edmonds, Wyatt Teller, Raheem Blackshear, Mari Barno, Tamari Connor, Tyrod, Vic, Silas Danzy, Greg Stroman. All those guys came back to Tech to come to the spring game. Like if that doesn't tell you that Tech is a great place to play, then I don't know what else does.
Yeah, and everything you said, Colin, is 100% spot on God. We got to spend Friday night at Spring Jam with Sons of Saturday, and we had a ball. Kind of just like picking out the different famous people and like the notable figures that were at the game or that played for Tech that were at the Spring Jam with Sons of Saturday. We saw obviously all the players that Colin just mentioned. Our buddy Lucas swore that he saw Frank Beamer, but it was actually Bud Foster, and he just doesn't know ball. I may or may not have been put in a headlock by Hunter Couture. We had a really good time. But like you were saying, it's really a testament to how much everybody loves Virginia Tech, how much everybody loves Blacksburg, and kind of what I was talking about at the beginning when we're talking about today and the tragedy of 2007. It's a huge community and everybody loves it, and it's just we might not have the NIL funds to go and make waves and buy players and give them brand new blue Fords and stuff like that, but uh, we definitely have the ability to be the best fan base in the country, and I do think we are. I genuinely do, and that's important, um, because like it levels the game for us in a way. Um, Spring game was fun. It was a good time. It was good to see the team take the field. It was also good just to be with everybody and have a good weekend. We got to do the 3.2. We got to have some fun. My body is still a little bit hurting from that run, um, but it was fun to get out with everybody and tailgate the rest of the day. I don't think I've ever been so tired in my life because we definitely skipped downtown uh, um, Saturday night, but it was a good weekend. We got to cap our weekend off with some softball, and fortunately got to avoid avoid baseball. I didn't have to watch baseball much on my screen because I had a tough weekend. But softball was you know, truthfully, let's end with softball because we want to end on the high note. Baseball had a tough weekend against Georgia Tech. They won the first game. Game number two, they lost 19-0, and then in game number three, they were up 7-0 and lost 11-7 because the bullpen just did not perform. DeGrowley, you're kind of like our resident baseball lover now. Um, What did you think about the bullpen? What do you think Virginia Tech needs to do to get back on track heading into the series against Duke this upcoming weekend?
Well, I thought that, after the second inning up 7-0, I could, go enjoy the weather outside. And, I stepped away from the game and came back and refreshed the page. And they were down 9-7. So shout out to Griffin, who shoved I think it was 4.5 innings that they let him pitch. He did his job. Fortunately, the bullpen, as you said, kind of, you know, gave the game away is the best way to put it. I don't know, like
How do you
pause.
get half an inning pitching?
I don't
Turnovers.
know. He has a tendency.
He had
It
a
was either 4
turnover.
1/3 or 4 2/3.
He had a turnover.
Okay, I see what you're saying with the okay. I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
it's thirds of innings. You get 3 outs. There's no half. You can't get 1.5 outs.
You couldn't. You don't know that he could be he could be after one out and like pitch half the at bat, and then force a turnover. Yeah, I don't understand. So for clarification, Colin and I were driving home from Blacksburg when the Sunday game was going on, and we were at the softball game before we left, and I saw that we were up 7-0, and I was like, "Word! Virginia Tech gonna win the series, bouncing back in a big way." And then I looked at my phone, and Colin, you can remember this. We looked at Twitter at the same time. You're like, "Oh, the tying runs at the plate. What the hell?" And I'm like, "What? Like, come on now." And then I looked again. I was like, because Colin and I were also watching NASCAR. We were kind of just driving. And then I looked back again, and we had lost 11-7. I'm like, "Word!" There it is. There's the bullpen really helping out. And this goes back to what we said at the beginning of the season. Our pitchers are really going to have to go deep into games in order for us to win, and the bats are going to have to perform. If we are going to rely on the bullpen, we're not going to go far. And shocker, we know ball. We it turns out that we know exactly what we're talking about, and at the end of the day, um, that's kind of what's going on. There's been a couple of instances recently where I've really questioned the decisions that have led to taking our starting pitchers out of the game. Specifically, last Saturday against Wake Forest, Parliament was really having a good game. Other than the 3-run homer that he gave up in the second or the third, he was having a really, really good inning. He wasn't, he was not putting people on base, and all of a sudden, we took him out. We took him out, and shocker, we took him out in the that inning. He put the reliever put 2 players on base, and then all of a sudden we scored. They gave up 2 runs, and that gap held the rest of the game until we pissed it away in the ninth when we weren't there. So that's why. Um, but at the end of the day, I don't understand kind of the decision in not letting our pitchers pitch when they're having good games. But also it's not going to make a difference because when they have bad games, our bullpen's going to come in and just make it worse. But like DeGrowie said in the chat, let's get away from this negative stuff. Virginia Tech baseball has a big series against Duke coming up. Need the bats to get hot. Need the pitching to kind of settle in and not walk the entire freaking roster for Duke on. Can't issue walks. Can't miss the strike zone like they have. But let's talk a little bit about softball, who had a fun weekend against Boston College in the Berg. Just in case anybody wanted to know, Boston College did wear a little bit of blue on Sunday. And that's important because they lost. So that really just kind of keeps that streak. If you wear blue jerseys in Blacksburg, you're not winning. Thank you to Zach DeGrowley for making sure that streak stays alive. Talk a little bit about softball. They had a big game, a big win against Boston College on Friday, and then obviously they swept them Saturday and Sunday with a huge crowd in hand. Ellis, you want to go ahead and start us off with that one?
Yeah, coming into the series, I didn't know much about Boston College, and I learned their pitching staff was supposedly really good. They had one pitcher at a 1.5 ERA coming in, and so we're there Friday, and offense is pretty slow, and I end up leaving, and we score like 6 unanswered runs, and we end up walking them off on a like 3-run homer or something. for a run rule, and run rule them again on Saturday, and then we go Sunday. We're down 4-1. We're sitting in the outfield, so we avoid getting kicked out again for talking to players. And Emma Ritter starts. She hits a line drive, left fielder, way too small, goes right over her head, and the offense just explodes from there. And I don't know if you saw me when Colin was talking about the atmosphere. We're playing UVA right now, and we hit a home run. We actually have bases loaded right now, and this team can rake. They can hit the ball, and they are right now the most exciting team to watch in Blacksburg.
What's funny is we were sitting in left field Sunday, talking about uh Colin mentioned this. He's like, Colin had never been to a softball game in Blacksburg, and we were thinking of like, imagine my only game of the season and Colin's first game ever, only game ever, and Virginia Tech loses to Boston College of all teams. Like it's frustrating, and we're down 4-1, and then Emma Ritter hits the bomb to left field. He goes over the girl's head, and it kind of starts a little bit of momentum, and we kind of got back in the game right there because we were chirping the girl in left field. Very next at
We
bat, or
didn't
maybe
say her name
we
though.
did not say
That
her
was
name, and you
important.
can't say her number
For
now.
the number, her
Yeah.
name
Yeah.
she
You
was
could
number
you
24.
basically
But I said 2-4, so that
you
was okay.
basically
You
just
cannot say
call her
20.
anything you want, just not her
William.
name, not her number. You can't say William officially. But right after that, I don't remember who it was that ended up getting on base, but there was a check swing that I think was probably a missed call based on what we were seeing.
Oh
But it
yeah,
really got
Michelle definitely swung
it
on that.
absolutely got the entire Boston College team ticked off, and the pitcher threw their glove. Their head coach had a Baylor moment and should have gotten tossed, but they let her stick it out. And it really shifted the momentum of the game because we were sitting there, and all of a sudden it's hit after hit after hit, run after run after run. The girl from the right fielder throws the ball basically into the stands. They could have
There was no net, she would have killed someone.
yeah, they could have like the bowl ball, the tall, really tall, lanky basketball player. They could have him playing catcher. He wouldn't caught it. You could have Yao Ming, anybody. They're not catching that stuff. Um, yeah, and then but we're watching Tech pour on runs, and we're looking at the scoreboard, and Colin goes, I don't know how they're gonna put the number up if they get double digits in the inning. And sure enough, Corey McMillan hits a grand slam to walk them off, to run rule them in 5 after being down 4-1. And they literally just put a 2. It was a 2. So it's like the numbers really didn't add up, but it was really cool to see that happen. A really electric inning for Virginia Tech. We're DeGrawi, you mentioned this earlier, and I honestly didn't know what you were talking about. I looked it up, but they clinched into the ACC tournament. I always forget that in softball, not every team makes the tournament. But Virginia Tech makes the tournament, makes the ACC tournament, and like Isaac said a couple of weeks ago, like it's a easy schedule for Virginia Tech moving forward. A lot of favorable matchups for Virginia Tech, and games that we should win. So maybe we can keep bumping up the standings moving forward.
So I think it'll be a battle for us and Florida State to be the number 2. We do play Georgia Tech next weekend, who is tied for 4th in the ACC with UVA and Clemson. So that should be a good series. But Duke really looks unstoppable. They swept Clemson. But I think we have a really good chance to make it to that championship again. And you never know. Baseball, softball, one game, anything could change. So we could take it down this year. Also, we just went up 4-0 on UVA.
Yeah, Ellis. I think it's important, that Duke keeps winning. Obviously, that sweep at the hands of Duke was an unfortunate blemish on the resume for softball. But obviously, and correct me if I'm wrong, but are they still number 1 in the country?
No, that was a different poll
Different
that they were
poll.
number
It was
1.
a different poll.
Yeah.
So, what? But they're in the top 3. I assume they're up there, right? I believe they're. I mean, regardless, doesn't matter. They're still in the top 5, and we need them to keep winning because if they, I mean, obviously, a sweep on the road isn't an awful thing if you're losing to one of the best teams in the country. So that's cool. Obviously, you live and you learn. Tech was not out of that game. They had a chance to win. They had a chance to win, at least the first game. And obviously, if you win game one, you don't know what happens in game 2 or 3. Quick shout out to Cam Fagan, ACC Player of the Week for the second time this season. She had a big weekend against Boston College. Obviously, she's one of those glue players for the Hokies. Her and Emma Ritter with the veteran presence. Michelle Chatfield, freshman home run leader with 17. But obviously, the team's clicking. We still no kind of sign of life for Rachel Castine. What's going on with her injury? But obviously there's a lot of room for improvement when she decides to come back, or when she's able to come back. So a lot of upside for the Hokies moving forward.
I did see her cast is off her hand now,
Cool.
so that is a good sign.
That's
for the
good.
future.
So yeah, I fully believe that she's going to be back at some point. And when she does, the world better watch out because Tech was a wild team when she was hitting the ball like she was. Yeah, and so softball, a bunch of interesting stuff's going to happen here in Blacksburg throughout the spring. We're really hoping that baseball kind of gets their crap together with the bullpen and kind of gets back on the rails like they were at the beginning of the season. But obviously, it's only going to get tougher for here with the pretty backloaded schedule for them. Softball is really going to have their really going to kind of carry the load here in Blacksburg for Tech down through the spring, and then obviously with spring game just happening, we're excited for the fall. Yeah, so a bunch of good stuff. Special shout out to our buddy James for coming on this time. We'll definitely be having you back at some point soon, especially when basketball season comes back around, so we can talk about all things Castle Guard and what's going on with you in Blacksburg. So thank you for hanging out with us and kind of letting us annoy the hell out of you for the last 50 minutes or so. Special shout out to Isaac, who makes the magic happen behind the scenes and just allows us to have a little bit of fun here. Special shout out to Zach DeGrowley for pushing off his baseball adventures for the day to make some laughs with us and hopefully get like 30 views on YouTube again. That would be pretty cool. And other than that, so like us, follow us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're really close to being able to do live broadcasting. That's something we really want to do, just so we can have some fun during the summer and do some cool different stuff. But yeah, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube, and thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you next time.